Welcome back, dear friends. I am back at Lit ECT, the YouTube channel that is one stop destination for English literature. Today, we are once again back with a very exciting video covering 20 most important non-fiction books. Dear friends, these are very important works that are path-breaking, that are trendsetters, and that are very important for all the aspirants of NTA, NAT, English, and especially looking for clearing JRF. So here is the list of 20 most important non-fiction works, and the very first work which we will discuss is The Selfish Gene, published in 1976. It is written by Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins is a well-known scientist. This book is considered as the most influential book on evolutionary biology since Charles Darwin's The Origin of Species. You can understand the importance of this book when we compare it to this book as with Darwin's The Origin of Species. Dear friends, it also contributed the very famous terms meme, which is the cultural equivalent of gene. You can understand once again the importance of it in present social media. The term which is highly popular these days, meme, it is basically coined by Richard Dawkins in this book. The fundamental argument of the book is that the natural selection process in the evolution of living beings is not about making the species secure, which was the basic argument of this book by Darwin, The Origin of Species. Actually, it is about making the individual secure, not the species, but the individual. And the individual is nothing but a vehicle for its genes. So basically there is transferation of genes from one individual to the next generation, and this is what Richard Dawkins wrote in this particular book, The Selfish Gene. The next book, obviously it is an epoch-making book, A Brief History of Time, first published in 1988, and since then it has always been one of the best sellers on non-fiction racket. Stephen Hawking, one of the greatest scientists of the present century, his most popular work, written with an aim to make the most important complex theories, discoveries, and phenomena from the world of physics, and in a language, in a style that is accessible to everyone, that could be understood even by a child. The book aimed to help the general reader understand the fundamental questions of physics and our existence. It was recorded in 1998 in Guinness Book of World Records as an all-time bestseller. Dear friends, described as Einstein's heir and the playful genius by Time magazine after the book's publication, Hawking also occupied a beloved space in popular culture. He has made special appearance in many movies, and even in the movie based on his own life that is called Theory of Everything. So Stephen Hawking is not a mere scientist, he is a cultural icon also. The number 3 book at our list is The Right Stuff, published in 1979 and written by Tom Wolfe, the leading exponent of new journalism, which basically made space in 1960s America. And the book chronicles the US race to get its first man into space. This particular Tom Wolfe, he was sent in 1972 Kennedy Space Center by the Rolling Stone magazine for the launch of Apollo 17. While he was there, he came back with 4-part series of articles on NASA's first manned space venture, which was coded as Project Mercury. And these 6 pilots, those who were involved in this mission, they were called as Mercury 6. These articles, based on the interviews and experiences of these astronauts, he spawned this book, The Right Stuff. In his use of novelistic techniques in his non-fiction, Wolf helped create the enormously influential hybrid known as New Journalism. New Journalism basically applies technique of novel writing into journalistic writing, thus making it more interesting. Against Interpretation, published in 1966 by Susan Sontag. It is a collection of essays and regarded as a quintessential text of the 1960s. It includes some of her best known works like On Style and eponymous essay Against Interpretation. Actually, in this essay, Against Interpretation, Sontag argues that new approach to criticism, it neglects the sensuous impact and novelty of arts, the aesthetic experience. Rather, critics focus on predetermined intellectual interpretation, so there is a sort of academic dryness which has seeped into the area of aesthetic criticism. Sontag, in fact, was one of the first critics to write about the intersection between high and low art forms and give them equal value as valid topics, which is shown in her epoch-making pieces like Notes on Camp, which is basically about LGBT issues against interpretation. There is also in this essay impassioned discussions on Sartre, Camus, Godard, Beckett, science fiction movies, psychoanalysis, and contemporary religious thought. So this is one of thought-provoking works, an area of essays that basically changed the flow of thought in academics. A very, very important work, The Making of the English Working Class, first published in 1963, a very influential text by E.P. Thompson, and it is considered as one of the foundational texts of the cultural studies. Dear friends, it is a seminal text, it is the central text of history of the working class. For the first time, a writer focused on the working class. It is an anatomy of the pre-industrial Britain and description of the lost experience of the common man after industrialization set in. Despite the lack of power and the indignity which is forced upon them by the upper class, working class emerged as England's greatest cultural and political force. Once again, I am going to talk about a very, very important book. Once again, a book which set the trend for many coming works, and even a host of writers took the issue. The name of the book is Silent Spring, and it is written by Rachel Carson, and it was first published in 1962. It is considered as one of the most influential books in the modern environmental movement because it exposes the hazards of the pesticide, especially DDT. Silent Spring, it meticulously described how DDT entered our food chain, and it has become one of the main reasons behind the growing cases of cancer and genetic damages. The book most haunting and famous chapter, A Fable for Tomorrow. It depicted a nameless American town where all life, from fish to birds to apple blossom to human children, they have been silenced by the insidious effect of DDT. As you can understand, after the publication of this particular book, a lot of hue and cry was raised. There were people whose vested interest caused them to raise objection, but Rachel Carson has included so many proof and so many authentic voices that the work become one of the sources of which ultimately caused government to stop the use of DDT in mass agriculture. Our next work is equally important in setting the particular trends. It is called The Structure of Scientific Revolution, first published in 1962. It was written by Thomas Samuel Kuhn and one of the most influential philosophers of science in 20th century. The Structure of Scientific Revolution is one of the most cited academic books. Its publication was in fact a landmark event in history philosophy, and sociology of science. So it is not only restricted to the field of science only. It basically changed the point of view of all the academics. Kuhn challenged the prevailing view of progress in science, in which scientific progress was viewed as development by accumulation of accepted facts and theories, or we can say a manner in which one generation contributed to the knowledge of other generation, and thus we heap fact upon fact. Rather, basically, he suggested that an episodic model in which there is a cumulative progress, but which he terms as normal science, but they were interrupted by the introduction of something new that he named as revolutionary science, which totally changed the perception of the scientist. And he introduced the key term paradigm shift, when current theories can't explain some phenomena or someone proposes a new theory, and this revolution can occur when the new paradigm better explains the observation and offers a model that is closer to objective external reality. Then we have a paradigm shift. There is a set of rules that is now accepted and the older set of rules that are now rejected. A Grief observed, dear friends, is a different type of work but very influential and vastly, we can say it is vastly read work. First published under the pseudonym N.W. Clarke, it is originally written by C.S. Lewis, the famous British novelist. It is based on journal entries which were written after the death of his wife Joy David Mann. Dear friends, basically it has 4 chapters and it recounts Louis' progression through the stages of grief. He struggles to come to the terms of his wife's death with whom he was married for 5 years. His wife died due to cancer. Each chapter explores a new phase of mourning as he openly and honestly sets out his deeply personal feelings that involve shock, anger, despair, and ultimately acceptance. Now we come to a very important book for students of literature, The Elements of Style. Originally written as a textbook for his students by William Strunk Jr. for his Cornell English class, in which he was a lecturer, and to basically recommend them a particular style that is suitable for all, he wrote this book, The Element of Style. It originally contained only 8 rules of usage, 10 rules of composition. Rules of usage include punctuation marks and other things, some notes on miscellaneous matters of form in writing, and lists of commonly misused and misspelled words. In 1957, after Strunk's death, the book was extensively revised by his student E.B. White, and after that it became the collaborative effort of Strunk, White and Kalman. Time named this book in 2011 as one of the 100 best and most influential books written in English. A very, very important book, especially from the point of view of cultural studies, is The Uses of Literacy, first published in 1957. It is a path-breaking book by Richard Haggard, which examines the influence of mass media in the United Kingdom. The pioneering work examines changes in the lives and values of English working class. Once again, we see a work which is wrote keeping in focus working class and in response to the mass media which has penetrated their lives. Against this background, Haggard studies how the various mass publications and other artifacts of popular culture connect with traditional accepted attitudes. They are altering those attitudes and how they are meeting resistance. So there is a, we can say, two-way process in which acceptance and resistance both go hand in hand. Notes of a Native Son, first published in 1955, which is a collection of 10 essays by James Baldwin. It mostly tackles issues of race and especially black American people in America and Europe. Most of the essays were written only in 1940s and 50s when Baldwin was quite young, only in his 20s. Writing as an artist, activist, and social critic, Baldwin probes into the complex condition of being black in America. It is one of the earliest work in which the black consciousness is presented authentically. The Open Society and Its Enemies, first published in 1945, written in political exile during the Second World War, written by Karl Popper, and book is one of the most influential books of all time. It is an attack on the base of Western metaphysics, the philosophies of Plato, Hegel, Marx, and it exposes the dangers that is inherent in centrally planned political system, which all these three critics promote. Bertrand Russell, when he read this book, he called it a work of first-class importance and a vigorous and profound defense of democracy. Black Boy, another book by a black writer presenting their point of view. It is an autobiographical account by Richard Wright, and it examines Wright's tortured years in Jim Crow Southern America from 1912 to 1927. In each chapter, Richard relates painful and confusing memories that led to a better understanding of the man, a black Southern American writer, which eventually emerges by these painful experiences. Black Boy gained high acclaim in the United States because of Wright's honest and profound depiction of racism in America. Now we come to a different sort of book, How to Cook a Wolf, published first in 1942, written by M.F.K. Fisher, who is the American culinary icon, and she was one of the first writers to use food as a cultural metaphor, describing the sensual pleasures of table with elegance and passion. She basically wrote that since we must eat to live, we might as well do it with grace and gusto. To eat with delight is not a wicked sensuality, but positively moral. In fact, the whole book is about how even in the difficult time, when we have the minimum resources, we can use them to their best potential. Enemies of Promise, written in 1938 by Cyril Connolly. Book is an inquiry into the problem of how to write a book that lasts 10 years. So now you can understand Enemies of Promise. Basically, a very famous quotation from the book, whom the gods wish to destroy, they first call promising. It basically points out that how many of the promising writers, they lost their esteem, they are lost into we can say ignoble forgetfulness. And this book also divided into three parts. The first is observations about the English literary world, especially the contemporary world of Cyril Connolly. Then the second is a list of adverse elements that affect the ability to be a good writer, and last, an account of Connolly's early life. What are the elements? This is important from our point of view, how to create a work that will stand the test of time. For example, books that can be popular even after the publication passing 10 years. And enemies that are enemies of promise include domesticity, drink, and politics, but also success. Success can be also one of your enemies. Testament of Youth, first published in 1933, one of the most famous autobiographies of the First World War by Vera Brittain, who served as a nurse during this period. It describes the impact of World War I on the lives of women and the middle class civil population of the UK. It continues with the second part, Testament of Experience, which was published quite later in 1957, and it encompasses years 1925 to 1950. A passionate record of the lost generation, it made Vera Brittain one of the best love writers because she included all her experience serving as a nurse, losing her fiancé, and then later living in a society which does not recognize the sacrifice of those who have lost their near ones in the war. Goodbye to all that. Another war memoir by one of the great poet Robert Graves' critically acclaimed autobiography traces the monumental and universal loss of innocence. Actually, goodbye to all that. Goodbye is to the innocence, the carefree years, pre-war years that occurred as a result of First World War. Written after the war and as he was leaving his birthplace, the thought forever goodbye to all that bids farewell not only to England, his country, his English family and friends, but also to a very innocent, carefree way of life. The book covers Robert Graves' lives and the world in which he lived until mid 1920s. So he speaks of his early year and of his years at Charterhouse. The American Language, H.L. Mencken's a historical book about the defense of American English, the English language spoken in United States, and he defended Americanism. He assaulted all those critics, all the prescriptive grammar of English critics, American school moms, arguing that language evolves independently of textbooks. And this book discusses the beginning of American variation from English, the spread of these variation, slangs, all these things which make, according to him, American English more colorful, vivid and creative than its British counterpart. A very, very popular, a very important book, a path-breaking book, a trendsetter book is Eminent Victorians, first published in 1918, a collection of short biographical sketches by Lytton Strachey. And it proved to be a groundbreaking work of biography because it raised the genre to the level of high art. Dear friends, there are four portraits: Cardinal Manning from Religion, Florence Nightingale from the Social Arena of Service, Thomas Arnold, father of Matthew Arnold, field of education and culture, and General Gordon from military field. He changed the perception of the Victorians for a generation. Up to now, the biographies were written as, we can say, a very modified account of their lives where criticism was completely out of reach. But he was very, we can say, cynical in his approach, where there was a skepticism rather than reverence, and iconoclastic wit and engaging narrative thrilled as well as shocked his contemporaries. And then we come to the number 20, The Life of Charlotte Bronte, first published in 1857 by Elizabeth Gaskell, who herself was a very popular novelist of the time. This biography was of her close friend Charlotte Bronte, and it remains one of the most significant study of the enigmatic author. It recounts Bronte's life from her isolated childhood through her years as a writer who had foreseen the single life for herself, her marriage at 38, and death less than a year later. Dear friends, the resulting work, which is the first full-length biography of a women novelist by a women novelist, it is, we can say, a landmark work. It explored the nature of Charlotte's genius and almost single-handedly created the Bronte myth. Dear friends, with this we come to the end of this very important video based on 20 most important non-fiction works. I hope you enjoyed. Please try to remember the list. There are many questions that are going to be asked from this list. Keep supporting like ever. Thank you, dear friends.